Immediately you think of, don't you, the question of what is justice from Republic, Plato's Republic, Book 1. You're right. There is then some description of angels. Again, I wish that I could do this from 248 to 300. All kinds of interesting descriptions of angels. There's a mention as well of Galileo within this description. Milton keeps coming back to Galileo, and at some point we're going to have to ask, what is up with that whole notion of coming back to Galileo? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Milton kind of saw himself in philosophy and theology what Galileo was doing in the sciences and astronomy. Namely, he was trying to explain the unexplainable in some kind of ways. And of course, for Milton, I think he thinks he was doing this to the glory of God, to justify the ways of God to men. At line 300 or so, again, all the way through, the angels are described. Adam sees the angel Raphael coming at line 309. And he even calls Eve to him and says, "Hey, Eve, take a look at this." And then immediately recognizes that it's an angel. This will, of course, say something about the prelapsarian world, where angels and humans sit down together and have a meal. And he sends Eve off to go and to make a meal. Then at line 350, we will have Adam meeting Raphael. Again, I wish I could read all these lines to you. I just don't have the time. And at line 350, Adam will speak and invite him in. At line 361, Adam will speak and say, "Native of heaven, come in, vouchsafe with us." Important, Adam will meet the angel alone. This is interesting. Maybe we'll come back to this one. And Raphael will begin to speak. And then at line 388, he will meet Eve, and he will hail her. Mary a second, and long after, in the same way that Mary was blessed, a second Eve. Line 388, "Hail, mother of mankind, whose fruitful womb shall fill the world with more numerous than thy sons, than with those various fruits the trees of God have heaped this table." Some have pointed out, well, sons are mentioned, but not daughters, then together they will have this meal. I wish, again, I had more time for this. At line 450, they are eating together, and then we are told at line 450, "Thus, when meats and drinks they had sufficed." Of course, the question of what meats could it have actually been, this has always been a much debated part of reading Paradise Lost. Is Milton suggesting that before their fall, that all they ate were fruits and vegetables, that is to say, they were vegetarian? Here the word meats is used, maybe, but not to mean flesh. "Thus, when meats and drinks they had sufficed, nor burdened nature's sudden mind arose in Adam, not to let the occasion pass, given him by his great conference to know of things above this world and of their being who dwell in heaven, whose excellence he saw transcended his own so far, whose radiant forms divine effulgence, whose high power so far exceeded human, and his wary speech. Thus to the imperial minister he framed, inhabitant with God, now know I well thy favor." Notice 2 times the word "know" gets used here. And obviously Milton is doing this intentionally. And at line 461, Adam will speak and will in fact ask, is there some information that I can know, that you can give to me? Notice at line 469, Raphael will respond, "O Adam, one Almighty is, from whom all things proceed, and up to him return, if not depraved from good, created all such to perfection." And then at line 469, he will continue to line 501 in this speech that he gives to Adam. He says at line 493, "Time may come when men with angels may participate and find no inconvenient diet nor too light fare. And from these corporal nutrients perhaps your bodies may at last turn all to spirit." And then a few lines later, "If ye be found obedient, and retain unalterable firm his love entire, whose progeny you are. Meanwhile, enjoy your fill, what happiness this happy state can comprehend, incapable of more." Line 505, he finishes. Then we're told that Adam responds, "O favorable spirit, propitious guest, well hast thou taught the way that might direct our knowledge. and the scale of nature set from center to circumference, whereon in contemplation of created things by steps we may ascend to God. In other words, he says, I appreciate the fact that you have come, you're sharing knowledge with us on ways that we can ascend to be with God. But say, what meant that caution joined? If ye be found obedient. Can we want obedience then to him, or possibly his love desert, who formed us from the dust and placed us here, full to the utmost measure of what bliss human desires can seek or apprehend? How in heaven's name, Adam says, could anybody created by God disobey God? He says, it's impossible. Now, line 519, Raphael's response, and this is an important set of lines. Son of heaven and earth, attend, listen. Which is, of course, kind of like Adam saying to Eve, awake, attend. That thou art happy, owe to God. That thou continue as such, owe to thyself. That is, to thy obedience. Therein, stand. This was that caution given thee. Be advised. God made thee perfect, not immutable. And good he made thee, but to persever he left it in thy power. Ordained thy will, by nature free. Not overruled by fate, inexorable, or strict necessary. Our voluntary service he requires, not our necessitated. In other words, here again is the key from Milton's Theodicy. You were created with free will. You have the ability to fail and fall. You are as free as you allow yourself to be. Voluntary service, not required service. Such with him, God, finds no acceptance, nor can find. For how can hearts not free be tried whether they serve willing or no? Who will but what they must by destiny, and can no other choose. In other words, it is not fated that you will fall. Now, of course, the dark irony is that we already know how the story ends. And God, of course, already knows that Adam and Eve are going to fall, begging some obvious questions. Right? We continue. Myself and all the angelic hosts that stand inside of God enthroned our happy state hold, as you yours, while our obedience holds on other surety none. Freely we serve because we freely love, as in our will to love, or not. In this we stand or fall, and some are fallen, to disobedience fallen, and so from heaven to deepest hell. Oh, fall from what high state of bliss into what woe. Of course, he's speaking of heaven, or of Satan falling from heaven, and of course, the word woe is used, right? Back to the invocation at the very beginning. Of course, it's going to obviously set it up, and Raphael knows exactly what he's doing at line 544. Obviously, Adam is going to request for more knowledge, and he will make the request at line 544. Though what thou tellest hath passed in heaven, some doubt within me move. I want to know, can you please help me to know what's going on? At line 561, it's interesting that Raphael will respond this way. He says, you're asking me about this disobedience that happened in heaven with Satan. And he says, high matter thou enjoinest me, O prime of men, sad task and hard. In other words, it's going to make Raphael sad to translate this story that he's about to tell. But how shall I relate to human sense the invisible exploits of warring spirits? How can I tell you what happened before you were created? Of course, Milton himself is expressing his own concern about how is he going to tell this story. How, without remorse, the ruin of so many glorious ones and perfect while they stood, how last unfold the secrets of another world, perhaps not lawful to reveal. It's interesting, the word perhaps, like maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but of course he says it. Yet, for thy good, this is dispensed. And of course, what is the this? Knowledge. In other words, let's put it in our notes. Note the irony. There is some knowledge which is good, and Raphael's going to give it to Adam and say it's an important thing. Listen up. Of course, we are back to the opening lines of Plato's Republic, Book 1. How can we hear if we refuse to listen? Raphael is, of course, saying to Adam, I need you to listen up. He says it to finish. This is dispensed, and what surmounts the reach of human sense I will delineate, so by likening spiritual to corporal forms, again we're to Plato, aren't we, when we hear the word forms, as may express them best, though what if earth be but the shadow of heaven, and things therein each to other like more than on earth is thought. In other words, all right. So he begins to tell the story. And the story now, Raphael's story, we will begin to quickly outline. Again, I don't have enough time to read it all, but let's play the game of exactly how he tells the story. At line 600, we're told, God brings all of the angels together, and he says at line 600, when all the angels are together, hear, all ye angels, progeny of light, thrones, dominions, princedoms, virtues, powers, hear my decree, which unrevoked shall stand. In other words, God says it. Listen, or as Adam said it to Eve, awake. Again, notice the mantra. It seems to kind of, Milton loves to do this kind of gig in his different books. This day, God says, I have begot whom I declare my only son, and on this holy hill him have anointed, whom ye now behold at my right hand. Let's point out, Milton parted ways with many of his own Puritan theologians by saying that the Father, God, begot the Son, and they are not co-equal from eternity. And this is, of course, going to give much argument after Milton's Paradise Lost is published, that this is, in fact, kind of blasphemous to normal Christian theology. Milton is himself willing to kind of defy the theologians of his day. Your head I him appoint, talking, of course, about his Son, and by myself have sworn to him shall bow all knees in heaven and shall confess him Lord. Under his great vice-regent reign abide, united as one individual soul forever happy. Him who disobeys me, disobeys, breaks union, and that day cast from God in blessed vision, falls into utter darkness, deep engulfed, his place ordained, without redemption, without end. So in other words, at line 615, there it is. God says to all the angels two simple things. My Son is in charge. If you disobey to your own destruction. Well, obviously the setup here is going to culminate at line 657. We're told, but not so, waked Satan. Everybody else was way happy about this situation, but not so, waked Satan. Again, the word waked obviously is important at line 657. So call him now, his former name is heard no more in heaven, Raphael says. He at first is not the first archangel great in power and favor and preeminence, yet fraught with envy against the Son of God. That day, honored by his great Father, and proclaimed Messiah, King, anointed, could not bear through pride that sight, and thought himself impaired, deep malice thence conceiving and disdain, soon as midnight brought on the dusky hour, friendliness to sleep and silence, he resolved with all his legions to dislodge and leave unworshipped, unobeyed the throne supreme, contemptuous, and his next subordinate, Beelzebub, awaking, wake up, thus to him in secret spake. And notice again, the genius of this, Satan is going to say to Beelzebub, hey, are you awake? Hey, wake up. By the way, line 666 of this book says about Satan, deep malice thence conceiving and disdain. Well, he will in fact speak to Beelzebub. Sleepest thou, companion dear? What sleep can close thy eyelids? And rememberest what decree of yesterday so late hath pressed the lips of heaven's Almighty? Thou to me thy thoughts wast wont, I mine to thee was wont to impart. Both waking we were one. Now then can know thy sleep descend? New laws thou seest imposed, new laws from him who reigns, new minds may raise in us who serve, new counsels to debate, what doubtful may ensue. And this word new, of course, if you're hearing it, the word new is the past tense for the word know. Of course, here it's new as in something new has happened and we've got to fight against it in some way. More in this place to utter is not safe. Assemble thou of all those myriads which we lead the chief. Tell them that by command, ere yet dim night her shadowy cloud withdraws, I am to haste, and all who under me their banners wave, homeward with flying march, where we possess the quarters of the north, there to prepare fit entertainment to receive our King, the great Messiah, and his new commands, who speedily through all the hierarchies intends to pass triumphant and give laws. At line 693. So spake the archangel, the false archangel, and infused bad influence into the unweary breast of his associate. We think immediately of 1 Corinthians 15:33, evil companionships corrupt good morals. Milton is definitely teaching a message here. Be aware of those individuals that would lead you unwarily, unknowing, that would lead you to do something disobedient. Of course, at line 719, smiling, God sees everything and says to the Son, hey, check this out. Satan actually thinks that he's going to be able to pull off this. Again, the omnipotence, the knowledge, the all-knowing, all-powerful God. However, God does realize at 743, we got work to do. The Son will respond by saying, you're right, and he as well laughs. In other words, there seems to be this almost like it's inevitable that this is not going to work out for them, but let's let them do it anyway. Of course, standing behind all of this is the realization that Raphael is telling this to Adam, who of course along with Eve will fall. So there's this really interesting kind of tension that's being played out by Milton here. Finally, at line 743, we have Satan ready to assemble in front of his troops. At line 760, Lucifer is mentioned, and you can run that down and Google that passage from Isaiah yourself if you're interested. And then starting at line 743, Satan will say it, we will not serve. At line 772, he speaks. And ultimately what it is that he is saying is prostration vile. He says, no way, I am not going to bend a knee. I will not. Will ye submit your necks and choose to bend the subtle knee? Ye will not, if I trust to know ye right. Again, back to this word know. He says it, and of course, will not serve at line 802. Of course, reminiscent of what he says in book 1, right, when we see him for the first time. It is here at line 809 that we meet Abdiel. It is an amazing speech. I wish I had time. I would read the entire thing for you. Oh, argument blasphemous, false and proud, words which no ear ever to hear in heaven expected, least of all from thee, Abdiel says, an angel saying this to Satan, obviously his superior, ingrate. We think immediately, of course, don't we, of that word being used in book 3 when God is speaking about Satan as ingrate. How can you do this? This is bad, all the way bad. Line 848. While pardon may be found in time besought, you better back away from this one. And then he says it at line 857. Rememberest thou thy making while the Maker gave thee being? In other words, God made you. How can you do this to God? We know no time when we were not as now. No, none before us, self-begot, self-raised. Again, notice this use of the word no over and over again. He says it. Our puissance, our power, is our own. Our own right hand shall teach us highest deeds by proof to try. This is Satan, of course, now speaking back to Abdiel. And he says, no. I am going to fight and I will destroy God. Well, at line 877, Abdiel's had enough of this, and he will say it. Oh, alienate from God. Oh, spirit accursed, forsaking of all good. I see thy fall determined. In other words, I can see the future, and you're about to get jacked. And thy hapless crew involved in this perfidious fraud, contagion spread, both of thy crime and punishment. We think of Dostoevsky's classic novel, don't we? Henceforth, no more be troubled how to quit the yoke of God's Messiah. And he says it. He predicts it, and then we are told, starting at line 895, then he says, his thunder on thy head, devouring fire, then who created thee, lamenting, learn when thou can, uncreate thee, thou shalt know. Brilliant. I just see this as amazing. This entire book has been structured around the notion of knowledge. And Abdiel says, you're going to learn it. It's going to be too late, but you're going to learn that you jacked it up. So, we're to finish. Spake the seraph Abdiel, faithful found, among the faithless faithful only he. Among the immutable faults, unmoved, unshaken, unseduced, unterrified. His loyalty is key, he kept. His love, his zeal. Her number nor example with him wrought to swerve from truth or change his constant mind through, though single. We can't help but think, for example, of our conversation with Thoreau and civil disobedience. And when Thoreau made the observation that when an individual is in the right and stands up against the wrong, it doesn't matter whether he has others, he is a majority of one. Here, of course, Milton playing the same game. From amidst them forth he passed, long way through hostile scorn. Get the word picture. He literally walks through all these angels that are looking at him, making fun of him as he walks past them, which he sustained superior, nor of violence feared aught, and with retorted scorn his back he turned on those proud towers to swift destruction doomed. The final lines of the fifth act. I call it an act because it's such a beautiful, beautiful construction, those final lines. Well, that's how it ends. Let's jump now to level 2 and level 3 quickly to finish our annotative work. Level 2A, themes, messages. Of course, the question about knowledge. Is it necessary, but dangerous? The human condition, of course, is it seems to want to know. Daniel Bernstein called this classic text on history the discoverers. We seem to have this need to know. Can we know and yet be safe? How about independence? I mean, we just saw Abiel. Can it be good? Abiel. Or bad? We think of Satan. They both stand up. One for the good, one for not the good. Right? Both of them, however, possess that don't tell me what to do kind of thing. And think about in our American tradition that we're talking about 1667. 100 years later is 1767. Coming close to that famous declaration of, don't tell me what to do, independence, right? How about this one? What about responsibility for actions? Notice, dreaming is not doing. Adam said that to Eve. Thinking is not doing.